You're listening to Real Radio, the nationally trusted name in real estate investing. We dig deep to discover investors' why in real estate. If you want to skip all the BS and get in investors' heads, you're in the right spot. Be one of the thousands to check out realradio.com.
This episode is brought to you by PropStream.com.
PropStream is one of the most trusted real estate data software solutions. PropStream benefits all real estate professionals. You can find properties and contact homeowners on the go with PropStream's mobile app. We offer free academy courses tailored to real estate investors and agents. Take advantage of our live webinar demos to learn the software and scale your real estate business. Visit www.propstream.com and sign up for your 7-day free trial to get more leads and grow your business.
Welcome to the Real Estate Rundown with Owen, Dashner, and the Bear. No, you're supposed to say my name.
Oh, Ted Kaasch.
Jeez, man.
You totally threw me off with calling this segment the wrong name again.
I guess Momentum Monday was just my vote. I can't help it what the viewers wanted.
I don't think we have a large enough sample size of what the viewers wanted to actually proclaim that.
We got one vote.
What was
Marty Cromwell?
Thanks, Marty.
And then he goes, I think the Real Estate Rundown sounds the best. And I just sent him a screenshot of the image that we created. And he goes, yeah, I'm a week behind on my episodes.
Yeah, and here you are back to Momentum Monday. So sorry, Marty got overridden evidently. But anyway, what's happening, man?
Well,
back in the studio again.
Back in the studio again, and I'm proud to say that I was opening up my phone.
This was really exciting.
Right here with you, and all of a sudden fireworks are going off my phone. I'm like, what is happening? And it said, you are a super host on Airbnb. And I'm like, heck yeah, baby.
And this was for the family place, right? The Oma's old joint that you've now taken back over, a hostile takeover.
Yeah, Oma's old place over then in Little Bohemia. It's been super successful. Made about a little over $20,000 on that in the last 4 months for a little Airbnb. I think that's good.
So you have a 4.8 star at least, right?
Minimum. So yeah, I have a 100% response rate. And I have 0 cancellations, and I have a 4.94 star rating.
Look at the kid.
Because I had one person give me a 4-star on location and a 4-star on price. And there's a person I gave like a free flipping night to because all the power went out.
This reminds me of our only 4-star review that we've ever had on Real Radio. It was the person that gave it cited one of our sponsors who they felt weren't like they just didn't like the sponsor commercial that we had, and so we got a 4-star rating out of it, and now here we are struggling to dig out of the 4.999999 hole.
Actually,
thanks a lot.
We're a 5-star. We bypassed that a long time
ago.
ago.
All right. I stand corrected.
Yeah. Now my Google reviews might be a little different. I do have one 1-star review on my local real estate meetup group.
Was it just your Ted Kaasch page?
No, it's
where people are like, "This guy sucks."
It's like
1 star.
It's like my Omaha RIA page.
No, thank you.
I think I didn't like the fact that I took him off our podcast.
Oh yes, I may possibly know who you're talking about. What's going on this week, dude? Hit me. What do you got?
Physically hit you like that day?
Yeah, slap me.
The day I had to slap you?
No, don't slap me. What's going on in your world, man?
Well, I mentioned this previously, but I had had my apartment building under contract, and that failed. And
as of like just this morning, right?
Yeah, the last night. Yep, they sent me over cancellation. I will give them props. So they got cold feet on it. I'm actually going to take credit for the losses because I had to sit down with them. They want to understand how to run Airbnb, and I think I overloaded them. And then they woke up and they're like, this is too much, and they're backing out of this all cash offer. But they've had a $5,000 earnest deposit on this property, and they didn't even fight me on the release of the earnest deposit, which they didn't have any rights because it's an all cash, no inspection, purchase. And they're like, hey, is there any wiggle room to split this with us? And I go, and I'm like, in full honesty, I have invested my time into you guys. On top of that, I turned off all my future bookings.
Yeah, so it's a huge. This sucks for you.
Yeah, this in
Yeah, I don't blame you at all for going after the earnest deposit.
and it's supposed to close in by the time this airs, it was supposed to close 2 weeks ago. But from airing today, it was supposed to close in the next 3 days. Of course, I have the funds allocated, to go into another business venture, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just very, very much of a pain in the butt.
I have had that happen so many times where deals fall apart in the last day, and it always sucks. So sorry that happened, man.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Not a whole lot of fun. You know what is fun?
Oh, I want to know.
I want to bring up something that I was recently asked to participate in, which is it's ended up being really cool. And I don't necessarily feel that I deserve to be part of this whole deal, but I love watching it unfold. So I'm from this small town in southwest Iowa, population like 1,200, Malvern, Iowa. My folks still live there. I grew up there with my sister, and I grew up there, and it's not far from Omaha, Nebraska, so it's about 45 minutes away from here. This is really cool, you guys. So Malvern, Iowa is a farming community, as a lot of southwest Iowa and all around Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and so forth. There's a lot of farming communities that are dying a slow death. Right, so you'll have in the industrial age, you had a lot of farming operations that were brought into the forefront. A lot of government programs came out that benefited farmers for participating in doing that and giving back and all that. What happens in real life is you have farmers that were doing their thing, and then they raised Gen X kids or millennials or whatever that didn't want to do farming anymore, right? It was just kind of like an outdated profession. They saw, maybe things they didn't like or whatever that their parents were doing, and they move away, right? So you have a rural community that gets decimated population-wise by the time, the parents are retirement age, because their kids are just like, I'm out. I don't want to bulldoze and do, I don't want to go out and fertilize crops and harvest and all that stuff. And it's a tough living, right? So this is really cool. So a lot of these small towns have been decimated by slow unraveling of their population over time from children that have moved away and just people dying off and all that. And this is really neat. So I got approached by a bank, the only bank in my hometown, Malvern Bank. Big shout out to them. They spearheaded basically a foundation that has come together. It's called the Charles A. Lakin Foundation, and they unveiled this program where they have $165 million that they're going to donate to revitalize Southwest Iowa. And this is going to be to the tune of 51 different communities, so 6 counties, populations of small towns exceeding 400 people. And if there are less than 400 population, that little town could get an anchor town next to it. So if it's like a super, super tiny town that's like, 100, 200 people, they can kind of like piggyback off of a neighboring community that's part of this program. Why this is happening is Charles Lakin ended up growing up in Emerson, Iowa, which is like a sister community to the town I grew up in. And they're a hugely successful family. They grew basically their assets over time by operating successful businesses and so forth. And they've started a foundation. They've done a ton of philanthropy for various communities. They happen to have a soft spot for our neck of the woods where I grew up, Southwest Iowa. And they are giving the town of Malvern $4 million as basically almost, I would compare it to a line of credit, and don't hold my feet to the fire on this. There's some details of this that I'm not privy to yet. But the announcement was this week on Tuesday.
But you've been working on this for quite a while.
I have, yeah. I've been to a few of these meetings and been part of this committee that I got asked to be on because just my background in real estate and so forth. And what the impetus of this committee is going to be is to manage and deploy philanthropic dollars into affordable housing and community development projects that will benefit the overall picture of the town or surrounding towns that it's going to be in. So this could be residential real estate, which is, I think, going to make the most immediate impact. And then it could also dovetail into, other commercial real estate, daycare facilities. So like when you look at these small towns, the biggest problem a lot of times is attracting and retaining people that are going to reside and benefit from giving to the community, having businesses in the community, and so forth. But a big problem a lot of times is there's no childcare facility. So like, let's say you have a town of 1,200 people that's 40 minutes outside of a big metro area. Maybe they have young kids and they're like, man, there's no daycares here. What are we going to do? Like, how can we do this? I have to drive to the city during the day. We have to drive 45 minutes to work and come home, and who's going to watch our kids? And so that's the sticking point a lot of times with these small towns. Or maybe the elementary school or high school or whatever doesn't have enough teachers to support the population base. So those are all struggles of small town communities. I'm super excited about this because basically the town of Malvern is going to get $4 million, and they can then go out and use that money as long as they have a little bit of a buffer in there, and it's like 8%. So you can't just go out and be like handing out money, hand over fist. You got to put it into smart deals. But this is going to go right back into the community, and the more of a population base that residentially you're able to grow that, then it's going to support more businesses, and it's going to support more child care facilities and so forth. And so this, I think, is going to have a net result in this community of Malvern as well as surrounding communities in like a huge deal. Now, here's where this becomes interesting. So I got invited to this committee, and we have these meetings, right? And they're like, okay, how do we do this? And then everybody's looking around the room. There's like 10 or 12 people that I haven't seen in like 25 years, right? And I do a lot of business with Malvern Bank, and they're awesome to work with. So I know the bank president and vice president really well, and they were the ones that asked me to be on the committee. And then one of my best friends from my childhood is also on the committee. So this has been really cool for me. But I've been going through and being like, all right, what are our options? And so they're looking at basically, okay, we have all these lots that were carved out as part of the FEMA project during the flooding of Iowa and Nebraska in 2019. And they had these funds divvied up for these communities, and I'm just going to say it, they were piss poor management on how those funds were allocated and the end result of it. I mean, they were just programs that were half-assed and not well run and so forth. But
what? A government program that's not ran
I know,
right?
shocker, right? But this Charles A. Lakin Foundation, they have a great basically plan for this, and they're designating communities to allocate their best resources, and I don't know how I squeaked in under the radar on this, but to basically manage these funds and
it's a small town.
Come up with a housing project or multiple projects that are going to benefit the community and raise the population and the elementary school base and the businesses and all that stuff. My point in this is, I'm really excited about this, and I feel like I am doing something finally that's kind of philanthropic, and I have no ulterior motive in it. Yeah. So giving back to the community, but like I leave these meetings, and they're usually like 2 hours long, and they're not convenient, right? So it's on like Wednesday night, and it's always kids have volleyball and like all kinds of life stuff going on. But I get home and I'm just like, I lay awake and I'm like, this is so cool. Like, I'm really excited to be part of this, and I really, really, it hits me in the heart. Like how I can help give back to my community through like whatever decisions I'm making or help to make. So the small part I'm playing in this, I feel super good about it.
So besides impacting the community, Charles Lincoln in his passing is now affecting you and making you rethink how your legacy is going to be.
Yeah, it's waves, man. Like this foundation and the ripple effect of all the moves that they made from a philanthropic perspective is affecting lives in ways that is like really immeasurable from perspective of like the overall impact. It's so hard to quantify.
I mean, if he changes you and he changes your legacy, this could have centuries of ripples.
I'm really excited, and here's the funny thing. So there's a guy named Jay Burdick. He owns Malvern Bank, and he is really resistant to be in the limelight at all. Like, he just does not want to, like, he doesn't want to be the guy, but he is moving so many things forward in that community that have been meeting resistance for years, that I have to give him a huge, huge shout out, because none of this stuff that I'm talking about right now, and there's so much more to this, he was behind a lot of the driving force behind it, and the conversations that have been had behind the scenes, like I can't even imagine how many hours and hours and hours he's taken. So he's given back so much, and so is Kate McGann. I want to call her out too. I don't think either one of them listen to this, but whatever. They're just pillars of the community, and they're carrying the torch forward to like pass on to, you know, future generations. And I just want to give them huge kudos. Like I'm honored to be in a small part of this.
So to understand this a little better, this money's coming in and you guys are going to figure out what to do. Maybe it's like build a house and then sell it and try to make an 8% return back onto it. That money gets recycled back into the system, and that process continues hopefully forever.
So it's basically like, picture a $4 million line of credit, and you could buy lots. So we have an opportunity to buy a fair number of lots, and then, but you know, $4 million only goes so far. So you have to then find builders that are going to come into the community and agree to build for X price, right? And this is kind of funny to me because, like, I'm from, you know, a big small town, Omaha, and I'll go to these meetings, and this is a small town, and people are sitting around like, nobody wants to come here, and like, what do we do? How are we going to find builders? And nobody can figure out, like, well, the builder is like the huge question mark mystery block. And I'm like, guys, like, that's the one thing I could probably help with here is evangelizing this whole program and bringing in people that might be interested in building here, and at a price that we can actually afford. So, you know, like, I'm kind of, you know, I moved away years and years ago after high school, obviously, and I haven't lived there since. So my involvement directly in the community has been pretty limited. So I'm coming in with kind of a fresh perspective and contacts that maybe people in that area don't really have, but I'm out of the day-to-day, so they know way more about that than I do, but I may have contacts that they don't. So that's kind of like what I feel like I can bring to the table, is connecting and just ideas and that kind of thing. Other than that, I don't know.
The way you get back is you keep on pumping that bank full of money.
There you go. But anyway, I just wanted to call that out. I've been waiting to tell this story. You've
been super excited about this.
Yeah, until the announcement was done, and that happened on Tuesday this week. They had a Governor Kim Reynolds came in from Des Moines, Iowa, to Atlantic, Iowa, and announced the basically rollout of this program for the 51 communities that are going to be affected by it. It's amazing.
Did you go?
I couldn't go. No. I really wanted to, but I just got back from a trip, and then the next day was just chaos. So
it'd be cool if you got your picture in the local paper with that.
Oh, I could have for sure, but I don't want to. Like, I'm not that guy.
You don't want that line.
I'm not that guy. You're that guy.
You don't want that guy.
No.
Even though you're on the podcast.
No. I'm on the podcast, not on a television show.
Your cover's on the podcast cover.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got those pictures of us
Gross.
on it. Yes. Well, that is some great news, and I'm very proud of you, buddy. I'm glad to know that I know you and that you're part of that, and love to know that legacy is going to continue on in the future, because you're going to probably give out, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars down the road one day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that'll happen.
Just like Charles.
But I'm honored to be a very, very, very tiny part of it. And if the only thing I do is evangelize this a little bit more and get more interest and eyeballs on it and people involved, then I've done my part.
Yeah, I was talking to John Hoyt about this, because he's heavily involved with the
Lakins. Yeah,
the Lakins, and we were just hanging out last week, and he was talking about this specifically, and so and I know he has the same pride also.
Yeah,
but with that, I think it's time to get in today's Golden Nugget. And this Golden Nugget is brought to you by Timber Creek Virtual.
At Timber Creek Virtual, we don't just keep your business running. We take it to the next level. Our virtual and executive assistants handle all the everyday tasks so you can focus on what really matters, growing your business. Need clarity on your financial performance? Our expert bookkeeping services keep everything organized so you always know where your business stands. With our seamless transaction coordination, you never have to worry about the details. Just close the deal. We've got you covered with cutting-edge digital marketing, proactive lead generation, and expert acquisition management. Plus, we handle the cold calling and messaging too. Let us handle the big C part so you can handle your business. Visit timbercreekvirtual.com/services and see how we can make your business soar.
And because I became a super host, I thought it'd be fun to talk a little bit about short terms. And so today's golden nugget is 9 formulas every short term investor should know. And so I will mention the 9, and then Owen, you tell us if you know what they are.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, well, all right. I got to pay attention is what you're saying. All right, go ahead.
Cash on cash.
Yeah. How much money you put in versus how much money you get out on an annual basis on any particular property or investment you make. So you put in 10 grand for a down payment on a $100,000 property and you get 10,000 back. That's a 100% return at the end of the year.
A plus.
Boom.
Cap rate.
Cap rate is capitalization rate. If you have let's say you buy a $100,000 property for cash and it produces at the end of the year net of all expenses with no debt considerations, you make $9,000. That is a 9 cap. So you take the total return, divide it by a point, well, whatever that is, do the math. It's a 9 cap is a 9% return on your basically your money.
Net operating income.
So NOI, net operating income, is going to be your end result after you subtract everything except for debt on a property. So all of your operating expenses, it's not just going to be principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. It's all of your operating expenses. So your gross income minus your operating expenses, irrespective of the debt service you have. That is net operating income, or NOI.
And that's important with short terms because there's a lot of fees that you don't think of that are on the side.
So all the expenses, you got to factor them all in. GRM, gross rent multiplier. So this is basically a different way from arriving at a similar, valuation, but it's taking the amount of rent received on a property over the course of. Well, there's some ways to do. I mean, and you're, by the way, you came up with this entire list, and I have not looked up any of these, so this is completely going off the cuff.
You're doing good.
But gross rent multiplier, generally you multiply whatever your gross rents you're going to receive on a property, and you multiply that times. And I don't know what the rule of thumb is. I like 6 and 7 are coming to mind. So you take that number and you multiply it by 6 or 7, and that's generally going to be your valuation on the building and what makes sense. So it's similar to cap rate divided by NOI, or NOI divided by cap rate. I've had 2 old fashions. So
occupancy rate.
Occupancy rate is the flip of vacancy. So if you have a 5% vacancy in a building, you're going to have 95% occupancy. So that'll give you an idea of if a property is located, let's say, typically in a tougher area, you're going to have a higher turnover rate, or maybe you have economic vacancy where somebody's actually living there, but they're not paying rent. So your occupancy rate is going to be like, let's say if it's 90%, that means 9 out of 10 units are going to be rented, and the remaining unit is going to be vacant.
In the short version of that, if you're on Airbnb as your primary source, if you go to your calendar, it tells you what your occupancy rate is for each month. And then after a year of operating, you can look at your total occupancy rate over the year, calculate your average rent, and give you an idea of what you should expect next month.
What's the average on Airbnb overall? Is it 50%?
I don't know. I mean, I think each property is completely unique to itself.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
All right.
Debt service coverage ratio.
Debt service coverage ratio. So this basically talks about, okay, you're going to have your income, and out of all of the debt service payments that you're going to have to make. So let's say you have, let's do some round numbers here. Let's say you have $1,000 a month in gross rents, and your debt service is $750. So that's going to be the amount you're paying for your monthly mortgage, whether it's commercial or residential or whatever. If you have $250, your debt service coverage ratio on that is like, I should have had better math on this. Let's say it's $1,000 is your debt service, and your income is going to be $1,250. That's a 1.25 debt service coverage ratio, and that's generally what banks look for. 1.3 or 1.25 is generally so that's. How well are you covering the amount that you're going to have to come out of pocket every month? And the bank is going to check you on that.
I wish this one was actually, I wish these were flipped around, but break even occupancy rate.
Yeah, I kind of get it by the title of it.
It's just what it is.
Yeah, like break even occupancy. So basically that says to me, like, how many units do I have to have leased in order to cover my nut.
But in the case of short term, how many nights do I have to have rented to break even every?
No, I like what you're doing
again?
here. Yeah, I like. So this is long term versus short term, basically analysis. So yeah, break even occupancy rate. So on a long term rental, you're going to be talking like, how many units do I have to have leased out of a multifamily property or my whole portfolio in order to break even on my debt service? And you're talking about like how many, how many nights out of a month do I have to have this thing rented out to cover my nut?
And a lot of times that comes up important because sometimes, definitely if it's an off season, you're only getting rented on weekends.
Exactly.
And so you're like, okay, so weekends aren't going to cover my nut. So how low do I need to drop my price on my weekdays to get them rented? So that I can make sure that this is lucrative and it's sustained during the offseason.
Yeah, and Ted really likes to cover his nuts, so he really looks at this a lot. What else you got there?
Number 8, LTV.
He didn't like my last comment. Loan to value is what LTV stands for, and that's basically like, let's say the property's worth let's say it's worth $200,000, and you take out a loan for $100,000. That represents a 50% LTV. So it's loan to value, the amount of the loan you're taking out versus the actual value of the building.
And we already had cap rate, but the final one is cap X.
Cap X stands for capital expense. And so this is actually, this is a good one to bring up because I think there's sometimes with investors, there's a little confusion on what exactly CapEx is versus operating expense or OpEx. So operating expense is basically, think of it like repairs and maintenance and other things that you have to do to keep the business running, whereas capital expense is a typically bigger expense item that is going to make an improvement on the business itself or the real estate, but not necessarily add anything from a cash flow perspective or increase rents, although it could indirectly. So you want to do some examples?
No.
Okay, I do. Let's do so operating expense, let's say it's cleaning carpets, doing some paint, doing repairs to appliances, other things like that. Capital expense is going to be replacing a roof, putting in new flooring in all of your common areas. Those are things that you can't necessarily expense. And by the way, we're not accountants here or CPAs or anybody that you should take any advice from. But
but we are real estate investors.
We are real estate investors. And CapEx is not a what they call above line item, but it's a below the line line item. And that means basically that you could shell out $100,000, but it isn't going to affect the value of your building because the value of your commercial property or multifamily property is going to be based on the income. It's going to be based on the net operating income and the cap rate. And if you lumped in like a gigantic, like let's say you got all the roofs replaced on an apartment complex, you did all the flooring and all the, like a whole big lift and remodel, you don't want that going against your operating expenses because it's going to kill the value of your building. So the government treats that basically as an investment, and they say, okay, we're going to allow you to depreciate a portion of your capital expense on your taxes.
And that is today's Golden Nugget. Hey man, good job on explaining all that.
That was a pop quiz, man. I feel like I did okay on that.
2 old fashions deep, and you.
I know.
You nailed it, man.
2.25 here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt like that was not bad, and some pretty good stuff in there. I think.
Yeah, there was. I think definitely some people are going to take some things out of that. And there's terms that are always brought up, and sometimes even the most experienced investors are looking at it like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it's good to get that. This episode is brought to you by JM Real Estate Capital.
Hi, it's Rob, JM Real Estate Capital. We're the money guys that you need to know for all your real estate investments. Talk to us. We can do what your local bank can't or won't do. We don't have millions, we have trillions with a T to lend. 844 we close, or go online, jmrecapital.com. That's jmrecapital.com. JM Real Estate Capital, smart solutions for the real estate investor.
Hey, you know what? Before we wrap up today, I got to say, liking the new look with the facial hair, bringing it back.
Yeah,
huh?
you think so?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a ton of gray in there, but there's a little bit. Touch of gray.
When my mustache grows out, I got this big white patch that grows right here, and it looks really funky.
Yeah.
So I get it.
I will say, I don't think we mentioned this, but I do like the new attire that you're rocking.
You've been really commenting
recently.
on my shirts lately.
I do like it. Would you want to maybe tell a quick story about what happened yesterday with your outfit? I don't think we were recording, were we?
Were we or were we not?
Aiden, fact check.
He wasn't.
He's panicking.
He wasn't here.
Damn it.
When we recorded our last episode, we're like going through and we're looking for some golden nugget ideas on Instagram. And then I'm scrolling and then I stop and I looked at this and it was
Gino Barbaro.
Gino Barbaro
Off of Jake and Gino,
and
multifamily syndication group.
And I grabbed it and I looked at it closer and then I showed it to Owen and he's like, "What?"
I looked at it for a minute. I didn't know what I was looking at. And I'm like, "Oh my God, he's wearing your exact same shirt." Like he held up the phone. It was hilarious. Anyway, had to be here. But.
He is a Robert Graham. He knows what looks good.
Okay.
Hey, buddy, we shop at the same place because I'll let you on the podcast.
Okay. Well, good stuff, man. So I thought this might be a good time for us to introduce the upcoming podcast on Wednesday this coming week. Grant Frankie. That's just a fun name.
I love
Grant
it.
Frankie.
I just want to call him Frankie.
Yeah. I would totally if we were tighter. But listen to this, Grant. We're gonna be bros. So Grant Frankie, Lincoln, Nebraska native, and book author.
Yep.
Yes. The Unlikely Investor, brought to you by Audible. And Amazon and all the platforms wherever you want to buy.
He's actually an Audible, so you know he's a big deal.
He is, and we asked him about the voiceover on Audible in this episode.
And the cost.
Yeah, and the cost. So this is pretty interesting for those of you aspiring book writers. Check this episode out because he's going to talk about kind of like what actually happens behind the scenes from an income and expense perspective and like the work behind it.
Andy decides who's going to do the next voiceover for his next book.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So good, really good stuff there. It's actually a really good nuts and bolts book on how to get started in real estate investing, and it's not super complicated. Like it tells you kind of like the main things that you want to know. The kind of like gotchas, like how the kind of the pillars of success within starting in investment real estate. And what I like about Grant's story is he has figured out how to. I really liked his approach on figuring out a formula for how he can quit his job, and he basically bakes this or boils this down into kind of like. All right, here's what I know that we need to end up with in order for me to be able to, leave my W-2. And tune in for this because he talks about basically accepting the lowest paid job at his employer as the baseline for how he's going to evaluate his deals that he's going to do.
And we find out he's cheated through everything because his wife's a CPA.
Yeah, exactly. So he's got a backstop there.
And any of our wives are CPAs and they're investors, or if your husband's CPA and you're an investor, your life's a lot easier.
Yeah.
So not fair, by the way.
No, super nice guy, Grant Frankie, and he's been a guest host on the Omaha Real Estate Meetup. He was a speaker there.
Been on probably about 15 podcasts.
Yep.
Also, all good ones.
Yep, and Bigger Pockets, not the least of which, like right during the weird transition time where they David Green and like he exited the show. So this is going to be probably one of the last episodes you're going to hear with David Green on it. Yeah. Actually, he wasn't on it. It was Henry Washington. I take that back.
It was the transition episode.
Yeah, it was Henry Washington interviewed him, but he did a great job on that. Just fun story.
Yeah, so we're going to get into borrowing against your 401k, how he acquired over 100 units in a very short period of time, and then kind of talking about his self-management lifestyle. So if you're self-management, what it takes, what that looks like, but lots of good tips and tricks, and I think you're going to love that. And with that, Owen Dashner, we sign us off.
Thanks for listening to the Real Estate Rundown with Owen and Ted this week. We would love it if you could support us by hitting the subscribe, like, and share buttons, and give us your 5-star review, man. About time we heard from you.
And check us out too. If you're not a person that just loves to hear us on audio, we're also on YouTube and Rumble, so you can check us out with our beautiful faces.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, peeps.
Deuces.
All right. Are we still recording? All right, we're back.
Welcome to Momentum Monday with
Still no. Still no from 10 seconds ago. Yeah, I don't know what to do now. I'm flat-footed.
Just sign off.
Right. What? Like how?